Who was Sarah? Sarah was a very important figure in the Old Testament, one of the most detailed and lesson-filled biblical stories. In this video, you will discover who Sarah truly was, the impact she had on the biblical narrative, and the importance she still holds in our lives today. Sarah, the wife of Abraham and mother of Isaac, is first mentioned in the book of Genesis. Her original name was Sarai, which in Hebrew also means princess, but with a different connotation than the name Sarah. Some scholars suggest that Sarai could mean my princess, reflecting a more intimate connection. However, if the name has Akkadian origins, the word Sarai could mean queen, especially related to Mesopotamian idolatry, as it was associated with the consort of Sin, the moon god worshipped in Ur, Abraham's city of origin. When God made a covenant with Abraham, a symbolic transformation occurred. The names of Abram and Sarai were changed to Abraham and Sarah, reflecting their new identities and roles in the divine plan. Abraham, whose name meant exalted father, was now called father of many nations. Sarah, in turn, was recognized as a princess, not just of one nation, but of many. This change marked the beginning of a new phase in the couple's life, with grand promises but also challenges that would require faith and perseverance. Sarah was about 10 years younger than Abraham, and in addition to being his wife, she was also his half-sister, the daughter of Terah, Abraham's father, by a different mother. This fact is mentioned in Genesis 20 verse 12 and did not cause controversy at the time, as laws against such marriages would only be introduced centuries later, during the giving of the law of Moses to the people of Israel. In the context in which they lived, the union between half-siblings was not only acceptable, but sometimes strategically advantageous, preserving the lineage and property within the family. Sarah is remembered in the Bible mainly for her beauty, faith, and challenges. When God called Abraham to leave Ur and go to an unknown land, Sarah followed alongside her husband, leaving behind everything she knew. They set out for Canaan, but soon faced a severe famine that led them to Egypt. There, fearing for his life due to Sarah's beauty, Abraham asked her to present herself as his sister. Indeed, Sarah was extremely beautiful, even at 65 years old. She was so attractive that she caught the attention of the Egyptians, especially Pharaoh. Fearing he would be killed so that the king of Egypt could take Sarah as his wife, Abraham omitted the truth, and Sarah was taken into Pharaoh's palace. However, God intervened, sending plagues upon Pharaoh and his household because of Sarah. When Pharaoh discovered the truth, he confronted Abraham and, in a gesture of respect and fear, returned Sarah to him, ordering them both to leave Egypt immediately. This episode, recorded in Genesis 12, highlights God's protection over Sarah and Abraham, even when their actions were guided not by faith, but by fear. About 20 years later, a similar event occurred in Gerar, where Abimelech, the local king, also took Sarah, believing she was Abraham's sister. Again, God intervened, warning Abimelech in a dream that Sarah was Abraham's wife, and that if he did not return her, he would be severely punished. Abimelech confronted Abraham, asking why he had lied, but returned Sarah along with gifts, further increasing Abraham's wealth. These experiences show Sarah's importance, not just as Abraham's wife, but as an integral part of God's plan for the formation of the people of Israel. They also reveal the tension between faith and fear, and how, even in moments of weakness, God remains faithful to his promise. However, Sarah's greatest challenge was related to her inability to have children. In those times, barrenness was seen as a curse, a shame for a woman, and an obstacle to the continuity of the family name and inheritance. For years, Sarah bore the weight of this silent pain. She knew that God had promised Abraham that he would be the father of a great nation. But how could this be possible if she could not conceive? Desperate to give Abraham an heir, Sarah followed a common custom of the time, suggesting that he have a child with her servant Hagar, the young Egyptian. Hagar conceived and gave birth to Ishmael. Although this temporarily fulfilled Abraham's desire for a son, Ishmael's presence brought tension and conflict into Abraham's household. Hagar, now a mother, began to despise Sarah, causing Sarah to treat her harshly, leading Hagar to flee. However, an angel of God appeared to Hagar, telling her to return and submit to Sarah, promising that Ishmael would also become the father of a great nation. But God had not forgotten his promise to Sarah. When she was 90 years old and Abraham 100, God reaffirmed his promise that they would have a son. In Genesis 17, when God changed Sarai's name, he said that she would be the mother of nations, and that kings of peoples would come from her. In a remarkable episode, 3 divine visitors appeared in Abraham's tent and reiterated that Sarah would have a son within a year. Upon hearing this, Sarah, who was listening behind the door, laughed to herself, thinking about the impossibility of giving birth at her advanced age. But one of the visitors, who was the Lord, asked, "Why did Sarah laugh? Is anything too hard for the Lord?" Confronted, Sarah denied that she had laughed. But the Lord knew her heart and reaffirmed the bet. And so, against all odds, Sarah conceived and gave birth to Isaac, whose name means "he laughs," recalling Sarah's laughter of disbelief that turned into joy. Isaac's birth was the culmination of Sarah and Abraham's faith and the beginning of God's promise being fulfilled. However, Isaac's arrival brought new challenges. During Isaac's weaning feast, Sarah saw Ishmael mocking her son and demanded that Abraham expel Hagar and Ishmael. This was difficult for Abraham because Ishmael was his son, but God reassured him, saying that he would also make Ishmael into a great nation, that the covenant would be established through Isaac. Sarah lived to be 127 years old, and her death is recorded in Genesis 23. Abraham bought a plot of land in Hebron, the cave of Machpelah, where he buried Sarah. Interestingly, Sarah is the only woman in the Bible whose age at death is mentioned, underscoring her importance in the biblical narrative. Besides Genesis, Sarah is mentioned in the book of Isaiah as an example of faith and trust in God. In the New Testament, the Apostle Paul refers to Sarah when discussing faith in his letters to the Romans and the Galatians, while the Apostle Peter cites her as a model of submission and respect for wives. The author of the letter to the Hebrews also highlights Sarah's faith, listing her among the heroes of faith, those who trusted in God even when circumstances seemed impossible. Sarah's story teaches us about patience, faith, and God's sovereignty. It shows us that even when our circumstances seem insurmountable, God is faithful to his promises. Sarah went from a woman who laughed in disbelief to one who laughed with joy at seeing God's promise fulfilled. Her journey of faith, with all its failures and triumphs, continues to inspire generations. If you found this story interesting, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and share it with your friends to receive more content like this.